our session, the first session on the last day, but as I was reminded, it's not the last session, so it could be worse. My name is Garrett Kilroy. I'm with the Independent Evaluation Department of ADB, and I'll be your moderator for this session. I'd just like to gauge the energy in the room. I think we're all a bit tired now, but hands up who's feeling fully energized. Andreas, there's a few more hands there, ready to go. not better than I expected, actually. And then maybe another hands up who is feeling a little bit like those beautiful pandas we saw yesterday, sort of lounging around and maybe wanting a bit of a nap. So, but we'll try and make it exciting. We've got a wonderful panel from GCF and GEF. And maybe just one final question, just to help the panel and to kind of understand the participants. Hands up who have been involved in environmental projects, evaluations, studies. Is there, got a couple there. Okay, so I think we'll get, again, a few hands. So we'll get a mixture of, I think, get your insights and also an opportunity for us all to learn. So it's a great pleasure to moderate this session for two reasons. Number one is I'm a huge fan of the GCF and the GEF evaluation units. In MDBs like ADB, we have to cover all the sectors, all the themes, and it's only once in a while that we get to do a deep dive in the environment, and whereas GEF and GCF really get to kind of focus on the subject matter, and I'm always on the lookout for their recent evaluations. The second reason I'm delighted to be a moderator is IED is undertaking an evaluation on natural capital for delivery next year. ADB was one of the MDBs who signed up for this common methodology for tracking nature positive finance. We issued our first biodiversity bond last year, and we also launched our environmental action plan. So it's starting to get a bit of a momentum within ADB, so I think we can learn a lot from peer institutions. So the session is on environmental evaluation for resilient and inclusive growth, and we have 5 speakers, so 5 presentations, so we will have to be a bit tight on time, and we have Beth and Erin who will help us make sure that the speakers keep on time. At the same time, I'll keep the introductions of the speakers to a minimum. If you go to the landing page for this session, you'll get the full biographical details of the session. So after the presentations, I think we'll have probably just one short round of panel discussion to give the audience enough time to share their questions. But as you're watching the presentations, do try to gather your thoughts in terms of questions that you'd like to pose to the panel. So with that, I'd like to start the session by introducing Yoonji Kim, who's the Evaluation Uptake Specialist at the Green Climate Fund. Yoonji, I'll hand over to you.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I'm trying the lapel mic for the first time here, so I hope it's working out nicely. Thank you, Garrett, for the kind introduction. I'm Yoonji Kim from the Green Climate Fund Independent Evaluation Unit. Oh, my slide is not there anymore? Okay, I can wait. So in this session, we are going to be discussing a number of climate and environmental evaluations from GCF and GEF. And I'm going to start off the discussion by talking about a recent evaluation GCF IEU did, looking at the Green Climate Fund's investments in a specific adaptation result area. So my presentation is more focused on climate adaptation today. As soon as the slide is back up, I can get started. It's okay. Yeah, day 4 session 12. Okay, Garrett, should we do a short conversation before the slides are back up? Thank you very much. It's fixed. And Garrett, my 14 minutes starts from now, okay? Yeah, we adapt, right? In the spirit of adaptation, adaptive capacity, we adapt. Okay. So as I mentioned briefly, I'm going to be talking about a recent evaluation that looked at GCF's investments in a specific result area, and that result area is an adaptation result area. So after that, I'm going to turn briefly to a systematic review that the IEU also conducted, looking at water sector interventions in developing countries with a focus on the adaptive capacity of beneficiaries. Then I'm going to wrap it up with a few key takeaways from my side. Okay, so let's contextualize climate adaptation a little bit. If it can go back. Could you go back to the previous slide?
The green one, the red one.
It's not working. Okay, so unlike climate mitigation, which has a clear objective, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, climate adaptation does not have a consensus on its objective or on its approach. So that's a finding from the GCF IEU's evaluation looking at the GCF's adaptation portfolio. And for adaptation projects, trial and error continual innovation tends to happen between projects rather than within a single project. So it takes a bit longer for us to really learn what happened in an adaptation project. And adaptation has its inherent complexities because when we say adaptation and the adaptive capacity, the resilience, we're not just talking about the beneficiaries, but we should be talking about the wholesome, a holistic system. So it's not just human, but it should be about ecological systems and biodiversity, nature-based benefits and results as well. So the Green Climate Fund looks at climate interventions through a more results-based perspective. And as you know, it funds both mitigation and adaptation. So with that in mind, we did an evaluation looking at the GCF's investments in this result area called health and well-being and food and water security. That's just one adaptation result area, and as you can see, it's quite long and mouthful. So I'll be referring to this result area as HWFW, if you don't mind. And so while looking at the early results of GCF's investments in this adaptation result area, the evaluation also looked at the value of the fund's overall result areas approach. It was a mixed methods approach evaluation, and as for the key methodologies that we employed, we did a portfolio data analysis, stakeholder interviews, the reviews of relevant GCF policies, frameworks, and we looked at the project interim or midterm and completion evaluation reports. It included 6 country case studies as well, and from the Asia and Asia Pacific region, we had Fiji, the Marshall Islands, and Tajikistan. And I happened to do those evaluation visits as well. Okay, so to put everything into perspective, the GCF has 8 result areas that form the basis or the foundation of its result management architecture. 4 adaptation result areas and 4 mitigation result areas. And if you look at just the adaptation result areas, you will see that each result area is rather broad, and in terms of coverage of each result area, it kind of overlaps. So for instance, the first adaptation result area is about most vulnerable people and communities and their livelihoods. But the second adaptation result area that we are looking at today is HWFW. So if you're doing a health or water security, food security project, most likely it is bringing some benefits that are related to the first adaptation result area as well. So that kind of coverage overlap. And the GCF Secretariat recommends that for the HWFW result area, the entities are encouraged to use the core indicator number 2, which is the direct and indirect beneficiaries reached. And if you look at the supplementary indicators under this core indicator 2, there's 2.2, 2.3 that are directly relevant to the result area HWFW, which is about the number of people with improved food security and with more climate resilient water security. From this drop-down list, you already see that there is no indicator for health-related benefits. It's missing from this list. Okay, so how large was this HWFW portfolio? As of October 2024, which was the data cutoff point for this evaluation, there were 286 GCF projects. Out of the 286, 153 projects had project finance that's earmarked under the result area HWFW. These 150 projects represented the nominal amount of $7 billion US, and of this $7 billion, only $2 billion was exclusively HWFW result area related finance. So as we noted earlier, the result areas of the GCF are not mutually exclusive. And many of the 153 HWFW result area tagged projects are supporting other result areas too simultaneously, such as the first adaptation result area that we looked at, the livelihoods result area. Okay, so all that, that's about the evaluation. What did we find? The first conclusion is that the HWFW investments, they are generating some important early results on the ground. They are highly relevant to the country's needs. They are addressing the core vulnerabilities of the population, and they are showing early signs of positive impact overall. So how do the HWFW projects look like? Many of them are either climate smart, climate resilient agriculture projects or water security infrastructure projects that have hard project components that build water infrastructure, such as rainwater harvesting, water treatment and storage facilities, and flood protection measures like seawalls. They do include a component often of disaster risk reduction and early warning systems for floods and droughts. So while generating overall positive results, the evaluation also saw some unintended negative results as well. For instance, there is a flood management project in Senegal that built basins to be able to capture water so that they can do better with flood controls. But these basins ended up having stagnant water for quite some time. And so what happened was the water started smelling bad, and it attracted a lot of mosquitoes, and it increased public health related risks as well. So what this tells us is that even with a perfect design project, there are things that could happen that could go kind of wrong. And so we do need to be ready for continuous monitoring and adaptive management measures during and post-implementation. The second conclusion of the evaluation was that the overall result areas approach of GCF had a rather limited utility, and it had a lot of missed opportunities as well. So the HWFW result area itself didn't derive results. It was inconsequential to the project success. The result areas were serving more as an admin tag that's detached from on-the-ground project management realities. As we saw, projects, climate projects tend to span multiple result areas, and the result areas have this overlap in terms of coverage. To date, there is no systematic approach at GCF to capture and aggregate results. So telling a result story at the result area level is also quite challenging. Moreover, when you look at the HWFW label, you get the idea that, so it is promoting a more integrated nexus-based climate programming, but in reality, it wasn't the case. A lot of HWFW projects tend to focus on just one primary sector, either food or water security. And the well-being of the HWFW is not clearly defined anywhere. So there is a lack of understanding on how to operationalize well-being along with food security and water security. Also, the GCF has developed these sectoral guides, and the results framework is mirroring a more sector-based approach rather than an integrated, nexus-based approach and programming. The next conclusion is that the HWFW result area are generating a whole range of cross-cutting outcomes and plenty of co-benefits, economic social co-benefits, gender-related co-benefits, biodiversity-related co-benefits, but these often go unmeasured or they are being underreported. There is no systematic aggregation of these co-benefits, and co-benefit reporting has been largely left to the discretion of the GCF's accredited and implementing entities. And as we saw earlier, there is a relative neglect of health and well-being in both GCF's programming and monitoring to date. There were very few health sector projects to begin with. At the time of our evaluation, I think there were 2 health sector projects. And there is no health-related indicator in the results management framework. So projects, even if they are generating health-related benefits, they are not incentivized or prompted to measure and report them. Okay, so that was a quick wrap-up of our evaluation, looking at the HWFW result area investments. Now I'm going to turn briefly to the systematic review on water sector interventions in developing countries that we conducted in 2024. So the systematic review conducted 17 meta-analyses to examine the overall effects of water interventions on the indicators that are relevant for the adaptive capacity of the beneficiaries. The SR focused on 4 large intervention domains, and these include, first, built infrastructure in water, such as drip irrigation systems or improved water canals. Number 2, nature-based solutions, so wetlands restoration, for instance. 3, institutional reforms. 4, financial mechanisms like the insurance for losses. In terms of outcomes, what kind of indicators did we use? People's income, income growth, crop yields, water consumption, dietary diversity, food security, and then so on. So out of these 4 domains, which domains do you think show the clearest benefits? We had the strongest evidence. Just guess? Any guess? 1? Any other guesses? Yeah, it was both 1 and 2. So water-efficient irrigation systems and ecosystem-based management interventions show the clearest benefits for enhancing the adaptive capacity of the population. In terms of the other intervention types, like institutional reforms and financial tools, yes, they did show some benefits, but relatively fewer studies about these were available. Water-efficient irrigation systems, they did show people's crop yields increased as well as income, leading eventually to reduced poverty, better dietary diversity, and food security. But kind of critically, we also saw a severe lack of evidence around coastal water interventions, such as mangrove planting and seawalls. So the 4 intervention domains that we looked at, they are mostly terrestrial water interventions. So we need to do something about that. Okay, so in closing, the GCF IEU evaluations did see some proven results relating to health, food security, and water security. But we also saw some gaps in the current results tracking systems, the result areas themselves, and indicators. Most prominently, the results and co-benefits from these investments are being underreported. And most result indicators that the GCF uses prominently are human-centric. They are more about the people and human development focused. There's nothing wrong with that, and I know the benefits of human-centric indicators, but it's not all, right? We need to also look at biodiversity, nature, ecosystem-based benefits as well. The water systematic review showed a lack of evidence around certain types of interventions, such as coastal water interventions. With that, I end here, and I look forward to our discussion later on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Yoonji, and thanks for being so professional despite the technical hitches. We do have an IT specialist from the Secretariat with us now, so we shouldn't have any more hitches. I'd like now to introduce the next speaker, Anupan Anand, Senior Evaluation Officer with GEF, Independent Evaluation Office. So over to you.
Thank you, Garrett. Can we have the slides, please? The first slide, please. So today we are going to talk about nature-based solutions, and there are multiple definitions of nature-based solutions, and all of them agree that nature-based solutions address 3 key issues. They address challenges from the climate change, they help us conserve biodiversity, and they bring human well-being. For GEF as an institution, they are a very powerful approach in integrating climate, biodiversity, and socioeconomic benefits. So GEF has been doing nature-based solutions for a long time, even before this term got traction. So what are nature-based solutions? What are the kind of interventions that qualify for nature-based solutions? So here's a picture that I took in Guyana, and you can see there are 2 kinds of solutions. There is one human-based solution that you can't clearly see, but there's a wall separating the sea from the city. Has the wall been effective in helping with the coastal resilience? And this picture says it all. So you have mangroves here, which is a nature-based solution, and you see the settlement. You see there are very few mangroves here, and you see there's nothing, despite having a wall. This is nature-based solution, because it's helping with human well-being, it's helping bring adaptive capacity, it's a cradle of biodiversity. Within an hour, I was able to take thousands of pictures of rare species, including the red ibis here. which is national bird of a couple of countries. Now, today we are going to talk about a portfolio of 933 projects that we identified with nature-based solution interventions, of which 263 projects had completion reports. So we're building on a very solid evidence base. You can see the distribution of the projects. They're all over the GEF-supported countries, and their concentration is highest in Africa. And we're talking about around $6.2 billion in investment in terms of GEF grants, but also a co-finance, which is 7 times more than this. The lead agencies here for most of these projects are UN organizations. And the multilateral development banks are not as active with the NBS portfolio as they should be. And LDCs and SIDS also are very well represented. Also, some biomes are better represented than the others. It's just the nature of intervention that defines their geographical situation. Now, there are different kind of activities and approaches within nature-based solutions. So it could be ecosystem restoration or ecosystem conservation or management. We also have some infrastructure projects, and I will talk about those in a little bit. In terms of the outcomes of the completed projects, 87% of the projects were found to be satisfactory. But when you look at the sustainability of their outcomes, it's very, very poor. So this is just to give you an illustrative idea. How does nature-based solution look on the ground? So it's defined by the geographical realm, as you can see here. So geography defines what kind of solution are we talking about. In mountains, you have terraces, we have contour-based plantation. In Bhutan, for instance, there's a flood control using stone and vegetation, embankments and dike walls. In Guyana, I already talked about the mangroves. In Northeast India, they're using bamboo to stabilize the slopes. Then in Brazil, you have agro-ecological systems. In terms of key findings, we found that the nature-based solutions are very relevant for the mandate of GEF because it helps deliver the global environmental benefits. However, question remains about the effectiveness of nature-based solutions. What are the trade-offs? How much does it cost? Does planting a mangrove is less expensive than building a wall? How about its sustainability? There are not enough evidence on this kind of cost-benefit analysis. In terms of policy coherence and coherence in general, policy coherence is foundational for NBS because it brings complex stakeholders together. And for that, we need policy coherence. And we have seen that it has been a great enabler, but also missing in a lot of projects, and there are capacity challenges, there are fragmented mandates, there are legal and jurisdictional challenges. So these things undermine the coherence and undermine the NBS work. In terms of effectiveness, as we already saw in terms of results, the GEF projects have been quite effective in delivering global environmental benefits and socioeconomic well-being. However, we saw there are a lot of boutique projects that it might work in a site and situation, but it's not systematically integrated into the system. And that could be challenging. Also, how do we measure something as complex as NBS, which brings multiple sectors? And we just heard from Yanji that how difficult it is to measure complex interventions. Now, in terms of impact and sustainability, NBS provides a very powerful tool in terms of bringing transformational change and transformational impact. However, it has to be deeply embedded into the programming, into the result system, into the policies across sectors and policy realm. So I will just go through few quick examples to show you what it means and how it works on the ground. So this is part of the GEF Sustainable Cities program, and similar activities are happening across multiple cities in the world. So you have Freetown, you have Rwanda, you have San Jose in Costa Rica, where tree plantation, there's a lot of emphasis on tree plantation. And as you can see here, that areas where you have tree plantation see much less temperature. So it's helping you with urban heat island effect. Can someone take a guess how much cooler are the areas with vegetation? You can give me a range. Okay, Gareth says 5 degrees. Any other number? Okay, you could be louder. Okay, so the research says, okay, we have 3 as well here. Research says between 5 to 12 degrees, depending on where you are. And it's just amazing how much energy bill you're saving, how many birds and species you're supporting while doing so. Here's another example from Philippines. This is a very precipitous slope. A lot of soil erosion, crop failure, and then after the project, you see it's become an agroecological system. That means you have trees together with corn plantation. This is how it looked like before, and this is how it looked like when we visited the project site. This is an AI-generated image based on the terrain data, based on the previous data. So this is being trained on actual data. So this is not a prompt-based going back into the time. Okay, another example here, mangroves, as I said, and this is in India. And you see before the project, very little mangrove, and then after the project, when we visited, you can see through the satellite imagery, but also with ground validation, that there's been phenomenal increase in the mangrove. And we all know what mangroves do to the humans and the ecology and the environment. So it's a main source of income because it fosters biodiversity, fish, oysters, ecotourism. So these women are part of ecotourism initiative. This project has been scaled up across the entire coastal belt of India. It was situated in 2 districts of India. Now GCF is scaling this up. Now, based on this evaluation, we had few recommendations for our council, and they approved all of it. And the first one was to strengthen the evidence base. Because how do we convince the policymakers and infrastructure engineers that nature-based solutions are the way to go? We need to give them the numbers. We need to give them the convincing power in terms of evidence that this is a better way to go, or maybe a hybrid approach is a better way to go. Also, MBS is a very complex topic. And it varies depending on where you are, what you're trying to do. And therefore, capacity building is very important. And with that, you also need policy coherence, bringing the ministries together, bringing different sectors together so that they can talk to each other and not undermine what one is doing. Also, GEF did not have NBS-specific guidance, although NBS is a cross-cutting theme for the GEF. So we recommended that they have a specific NBS-based guidance, what are the entry points, and how to do it, how to monitor it, and we have put them to work, and they are coming up with a guidance on this. And finally, private sector. The role of private sector becomes very important in infrastructure sector, particularly because NBS also needs a lot of financial resources and engagement of various stakeholders, and therefore, their engagement through blended finance in GEF is recommended by our evaluation. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention. Over to you, Garrett.
Thank you, Anupam. Thank you so much. And now we will move over back to GCF with Michelle Dong, one of their impact evaluation specialists. So over to you. Would you like?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining this early morning session. So, my name is Michelle Dong, and I'm also from the Independent Evaluation Unit of the Green Climate Fund. And building on to Yeonji's presentation previously, the IEU team conducts corporate thematic independent evaluation, but we also have a small team looking at project level impacts for selected number of GCF funded projects. And today I'll be sharing one of those impact evaluation results. And the main aim for this impact evaluation, which is conducted under our Learning Oriented Real-Time Assessment Program, LORTA program in short, is for learning, to understand what works, what doesn't in climate interventions for the GCF and also for the wider community. So today it's my honor to present one of our very recent impact evaluation findings from Madagascar. And this impact evaluation tries to answer this question: can forests be conserved while building stronger livelihoods? Next slide, please. Thank you. So this project aims to tackle two challenges faced by Madagascar forest as well as the rural communities. As you can see in the map here, deforestation is happening quickly in Madagascar. According to FAO, almost half of Madagascar's forests have vanished in just 60 years. The main driver for this deforestation is unsustainable land use, including slash and burn agriculture activities, which means burning lands, clearing out forests to build farmlands, as well as high reliance on forest resources for their livelihoods as well as energy sources. Also, Madagascar is one of the poorest countries in Africa, with 75% of the population living on less than $1.9 a day. Now, this project called Sustainable Landscape in Eastern Madagascar project was implemented by Conservation International Madagascar in 2019, funded by the GCF with funding of $16 million US. And it aims to address both the adaptation and mitigation objectives. First, on the adaptation side, the project provided training and inputs to smallholder farmers to adopt more climate-resilient agricultural practices and also agroforestry techniques, and also promoted alternative livelihood activities. On the mitigation side, forest protection activities went on, for example, by demarcating the physical areas of the forest, restoring forest areas where degradation already happened, and also supporting community-based local forest patrols by providing stipends and also necessary equipment. And I didn't include the theory of change slide here because of the time, but by this two activities, we aim to promote households to adopt these climate resilient practices, which will in turn lead to higher agricultural production, better food security, and resilience against climate shocks in the end. And this was an impact evaluation, and just to give you like 3 things that you need to remember for this impact evaluation. So the IEU team tracked 1,600 households from 2019, right before project implementation, all the way to 2025, earlier this year, after project completion, through 3 rounds of data collection. Also, one thing also to note is that for this end-line results, we are looking at the impact of the project support that happened from 2019 to 2021. So we're looking at the sustained impact of this project 4 years after project support completed. Lastly, we use a difference in difference technique which means that we try to compare changes in outcomes between project households as well as non-project households that are similar in characteristics to the project households. So moving on to the results. First, the good news. Forests are better protected. Based on the deforestation data calculated by the Madagascar's REDD+ Authority, we can see that forest loss dropped from 3.2% in 2018 to 0.8% in 2023. And this suggests that patrolling activities and restoration activities in project areas were effective. Also, the end-line household data that we collected also is in line with this reduction in deforestation. We see that household behavior changed. Households are moving away from relying on forest resources, getting their primary income sources from forest, towards more year-round farming activities, especially during the lean season, which shows an early sign of resilience. When we look into the adoption of conservation practices, the message is a bit more nuanced. So not all practices fared equally. For practices like soil conservation, including mulching, these were more individual practices and low cost, which didn't need much external support. They were more likely to stick all the way to the end line. But for labor and input-intensive practices such as irrigation, terracing, off-season rice, these practices dropped after project support ended. And we looked into the data more carefully as well as the qualitative interviews, and there are mainly three reasons, commonly cited challenges regarding this drop. First is the limited access to inputs. After project support ended, remote households were less likely to access these inputs, including improved seeds and fertilizers due to the poor road conditions. Second, the loss of training. So in order for more labor and input-intensive practices to sustain, households emphasized that more ongoing trainings were needed for them to stick. Lastly, there was a large cyclone in 2022 in Madagascar, which wiped out most of the harvest that was promoted by this project, which led to undermining the farmers' confidence on the promoted techniques. So those were the main challenges. Now, despite these challenges, we see that there is a sustained increase in the total value of crop production, mostly through production of the promoted crops, including bambara peas, white beans, and higher market engagement. One thing to note is that the income measure here, it may be underestimated because more longer-term crops, including vanilla and coffee, that profits were not realized yet at the time of the end-line data collection. Despite this increase in crop income, we don't see an equivalent increase in food security. According to the WFP Carry Index that we use to understand the food security, we actually see a drop in food security for both for the treatment and control area from the baseline and end line. And this points to the need for more targeted food security measures, and income only cannot be translated into higher food security. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there was a large cyclone that hit the project area in 2022, and we tried to map the cyclone exposure, and the darker blue shows the higher intensity of cyclones, together with the food security map, and the darker red area shows the more food insecure regions. And we actually see that the areas hit hardest by the cyclone had also the highest food security, which suggests that this recent climate shocks have worsened food security. Now, this leads to our natural question. So did the project help households cope better with these cyclones? This is my life last night. And The answer is yes. When we look at project households affected by the cyclone, they were less likely to use these negative coping strategies, including harvesting wild food from the forest, reducing meals in terms of frequency and quantity, begging for food, compared to non-project households also affected by the cyclone. They also used fewer long-term harmful strategies, for example, withdrawing children from school or selling their durable assets, but this was not statistically significant. And overall, this is just that the program led to stronger resilience, likely due to more diversified livelihoods and better preparedness. Now, I know that my time is up, so these are the main findings from this project. So we see that forests can be protected while building stronger livelihoods, and I hope to discuss the policy implications during the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Michelle, and I look forward to discussing your topic at in the discussion. So I'll move over now quickly to Silke, Evaluation Officer at GEF, and over to you, Silke.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you. So I would like to start with a question. Who in the audience, who of you have ever visited a landfill, a garbage dump? Please show your hands. Okay, quite some people have. So I'm talking about those sites where barefooted children, along with women and animals, sift through the garbage. Your clothes smell days after you leave. The toxic liquids seep into the groundwater. And my organization, the Global Environmental Facility, helps countries solve these issues. And so over the last year, I was privileged to work on an evaluation covering chemicals and waste. So over the past 10 years, the GEF has implemented some almost 500 projects, 2 billion in financing and 13 billion in co-financing. And the Global Environmental Facility helps countries comply with convention commitments for the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants and for the Minamata Convention on Mercury. So what we found about the GEF's approach over the 10-year or some period is that it moved from a chemical by chemical approach to an integrated approach. And that makes sense to address multiple environmental issues at once. However, the specific focus helping the conventions got somewhat lost in the middle of it, and now the GEF is rebalancing the integrated approach with a more focused approach. So in terms of outcomes, the GEF chemicals and waste portfolio performed pretty much as well as other sectors. However, on sustainability, it outperformed other sectors. And why is that? It's because of the heavy involvement of the private sector. And when I went to North Macedonia, I found a project that helped companies to clean up transformers from PCBs. And 10 years after project closure, it was still working and thriving. So private sector was one area where GEF engagement in the private sector helped catalyze transformational change. And to give you an example of that transformational change, it comes from Vietnam, where Vietnam engaged in eco-industrial parks. one company shares their end product with another. So these resource sharing, instead of releasing the garbage into the environment, really helped. It was also cost efficient, and the approach was made a law in Vietnam and scaled up over the whole country. So that led to transformational change. Another area where the GEF was successful was technological innovation, green chemistry, where harmful chemicals were substituted with safer alternatives. And the third area is strong legislation. And there I would like to share an example from Egypt, where a law helped informal waste pickers become formalized, and that led to project success. So despite all these success stories, there were challenges as well. Here. So it was hard for the GEF to involve smaller suppliers and SMEs to green their production processes. And then when the second point on technology, when I went to all 6 case study countries we covered, I found imported machinery not working, not being used. So there seems to be a mismatch between the skills level in the country and the imported machinery, in addition to lack of spare parts and a budget for operation. And lastly, the import bans were not enforced. So when I went around to these countries, I clearly saw that they generated health co-benefits. However, measuring those posed a challenge because of the relatively short time horizon of a project and the much longer time it takes for health benefits, co-benefits to manifest themselves. So our recommendations for the GEF were to strengthening policy reforms, enhancing private sector engagement for sustainability reasons, to tailoring technologies to the local context, and lastly, integrating health co-benefits into monitoring systems. So thank you very much, and back to you, Garrett.
Thank you very much, Silke. So our last speaker is Zanya, also from the GEF, and I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Garrett, and thank you for the opportunity to share our work on evaluating technological innovations, GEF support for technological innovation. The previous speaker was mentioned technological innovations in the context of chemicals and waste, and let me talk a little more broadly in the overall context of the GEF. So why did we look at this issue at all? So first of all, the traditional approaches, can you hear me well? Traditional approaches are not sufficient to address mounting planetary crisis that we have been discussing for the past few days. At the same time, the advanced technological advancements of the past decade and generate opportunities to address some of this crisis, generate environmental and socioeconomic benefits at a large scale and greater efficiency, if these technological advancements are managed within their sustainability framework. By using these technological innovations, GEF actually has, and other organizations have an opportunity to steer them towards environmental and planetary goals. So our purpose was to see to what extent GEF is embracing these new opportunities generated by new developments, by cutting-edge technology, and to what extent it is ready to embrace those. And in doing this work, we faced a challenge. How can you systematically identify these technological innovations across the portfolio? We looked at the GF investments over the past decade, over the 3 replenishment periods, and the portfolio is quite large. It's more than 2,000 projects. So how can we do it systematically? How can we compare results across the portfolio? We decided to develop the taxonomy of technologies. And how did we do that? We used machine learning solutions combined with human validation. So with the help of large language models, we extracted technological terms from GF strategies, from the advisory documents by our scientific and technical advisory panels. The GF has its own scientific and technical advisory panel, so this is important, from broader literature and from project documents. Then we used computational methods to cluster these terms together and develop hierarchies. But then, of course, it would be good to stop here. But we had to validate this information. So we reviewed all these results. We got back to the paragraphs where these terms existed. We consulted with the experts in technology for the environment. And as the taxonomy started developing, we started interviewing our stakeholders. GF Secretariat, GF agencies, Scientific and Technical Advisory Panel. As a result, we developed a taxonomy of 120 technologies, and it was divided on several categories, including cutting-edge technological innovations. So, for example, artificial intelligence or green hydrogen. So for us, the cutting-edge technology is something which is explicitly marked as technological innovation, either in GF strategies or in advisory documents by our scientific and technical advisory panel or in broader literature. But we also included broader technological innovations such as digital platforms or geospatial technology, remote sensing technology, something which is innovational but maybe has been there for a little bit longer. And then we had a group of other technologies, which is very broad technologies and maybe something that has been there for a while, well established. What did we find? We found that technological elements are present in the majority of the portfolio, in 63%. But when we look at innovations, 31% of projects included broader technological innovations, and 10% included emerging technologies. We also saw a growth of technological innovations over the time between the GF replenishment periods, which was facilitated by several developments in the GF. At the same time, when looking at disruptive technological innovations that have the potential to generate environmental impacts at a large scale, again, if managed within the sustainability framework, these innovations were largely absent or had very limited presence. For example, we identified 12 projects out of 2,000 that explicitly were applying or planning to apply artificial intelligence or machine learning. We didn't find projects that would use robotics, nanotechnology, or cellular agriculture. And this limited presence of these emerging and disruptive technologies is not in line with the pace of technological development, with available use cases for the environment, and the growing expertise within some GF agencies. So in terms of risks, GF has developed risk appetite. And within its risk appetite, it says that it wants to see high innovation risk. We found that this risk appetite statement has not yet translated in the portfolio itself. The innovation risks remain low to moderate. And in addition, when it comes to emerging technologies, their identification and management of well-known risks associated with emerging technologies is often not done, is often incomplete. For example, projects often didn't, that were planning to use artificial intelligence or blockchain, didn't discuss the risks associated with excessive energy use or data privacy. In terms of effectiveness, projects with technological innovations can generate transformational change when they address levers related to systemic change, such as policy, finance, behavior change. And let me give you an example from China. And I see our colleagues from UNIDO Evaluation Office sitting here in the room. So this project introduced several technological innovations to help with the sound management and disposal of persistent organic pollutants, POPs shortly, POPs pesticides and POPs wastes. What was important for this project that they, in addition to technological innovations, they used other levers, as we just discussed. They introduced policies to support high uptake of these innovations. They helped develop business models that made it attractive for the private sector to use these technologies at large scale. And what is important, they also used adaptive management. They started with a larger list of proposals, what they wanted to try to help address the POPs, pesticides and POP waste issue. And by using diagnostics and stakeholder consultations, they narrowed down this list. So the results exceeded expectations, including decreased risks for up to health risks for up to 15 million people. Okay, so what are the enablers and barriers for the GEF? So within the GEF itself, there are certain strategic elements that are already there and that helping the growth of technological innovation, such as stated risk appetite, for high innovation risk appetite, certain flexible financing windows that explicitly encourage innovation and make it easier to partner with non-traditional partners, such as startups, microfinance institutions, and other innovators. But of course, the GEF doesn't want innovation to be limited to certain parts of its portfolio. It actually wants it to be mainstreamed. So what can be done? So there are certain barriers that still limits its ability to embrace technological innovation at a larger scale. One of them is a little bit paradoxic, the demand-driven nature of the GEF partnership. Within this nature, countries and agencies come with their proposals. So on the one hand, this model ensures country ownership, but it limits the ability of the GEF Secretariat to steer, to guide the adoption of certain large-scale technological innovations. There is a lack of strategic approaches or tools to help countries and agencies to take higher innovation risks. There are limited strategic private sector partnerships. So what can GEF do to help countries and agencies to use higher innovation risks? Okay. So, first of all, operational guidance to manage risks consistently. So there is this high risk appetite, but it's still not translating in the portfolio. Second, it's targeted research to support experimentation and technology deployment. Third is partnerships with proven innovators. In order to deploy innovation, it's not sufficient to stay within your network. You need to bring innovators, someone who is already doing and developing innovations. What are the implications for evaluators? Okay. There is a last slide, but maybe I'll just say it to you. The approach that we use, the machine learning solution coupled with human validation, is an approach that can be used not only for looking at technological innovation, but also looking at other issues and themes. It allows to discover information at a large scale. It allows to identify patterns that are not known otherwise. But such approaches have to be coupled with with expert validation and with triangulation with other data sources. In our case, we use stakeholder interviews and deep dives in certain programmatic areas. This concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. Looking forward for discussion.
Thanks so much, Xenia. And I'll ask the panelists to come to the table, front table. And I have questions in my back pocket, but I think because we were delayed at the start, I think we'll go straight to the participants' Q&A. Just a couple of kind of observations. I think excellent presentations from the two institutions, and I think they show the range of entry points that environment covers for development work, everything from nature-based solutions to managing chemicals and waste. And but I'd like to open up the questions, and there are mics located throughout. So let's just see who wants to ask for it. We have a couple, 1, 2. So Sonia, the gentleman in the middle here, and then Alvin, and then yourself. So that's 4. So let's take 4 questions, and we'll start from there. Thank you. So Sonia first.
Thank you so much. Brilliant presentations. I'm so grateful for all of this knowledge sharing. But I had a question for the GEF team, primarily Anupam's question. On the NBS, Anupam, were you also able to look at the impact of livelihoods on those projects?
Yes.
Maybe we'll just take the rest of the questions, if that's okay. So also, if you could give us your name and your affiliation before your question. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. I'm Paul from the Philippines, Department of Economic Planning and Development. My question is on the impact evaluation. I just want to know the background on how the project was selected. Is there a clear guidelines within the organization on how to prioritize which project should be subjected to impact evaluation? Or maybe you could also describe the extent of conduct of IE within the portfolio, if it's widely used or not. And then there's another question is on the first presentation, I think mentioned about there's a lack of information on outcomes. Maybe, if I got that right. No. Is it also because there's little conduct of impact evaluation where we especially want to answer the attribution question? And another question is on, we all know that impact evaluations are expensive, no? And I think during the talk of the Dean, he mentioned really on trade-offs, no? And maybe on the cost effectiveness side, how do we really sort of make the case for conducting these expensive studies? Were there sort of that discussion, or it's already clear policy? Because of course, as mentioned by Dean, so we could have used the money to really do some interventions.
Okay, I might interrupt you there. I think you've got the main questions. So I'll hand over to Alvin behind, and then the gentleman in front of Alvin.
Good morning. I'm Alvin Morales from the Asian Development Bank. Again, good presentations, but I'd like to ask some specific questions on the GCF. Basically, these are on adaptation, right? But in your portfolio, do you have projects which address both mitigation and adaptation? And if so, how did you deal with it in that study? Second is, I'm quite surprised with the findings coming from the study on Madagascar, and I'm willing to, for example, to discuss some details further in the context of sustainability. That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And gentlemen, and we'll take another round after these four. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ranjit De Silva from Sri Lanka. I have one question but three parts for three speakers.
If you can keep them concise,
very,
please.
Very concise. Yeah. Kim, you mentioned the four interactive intervention domains that are interactive, and although our projects are integrated, we have used siloed indicators or isolated indicators to measure the performance of the activities. Rather than going for indicators, if we try to build indices for each sector, which give us the performance evaluation as a composite measure, wouldn't that be better rather than going into individual indicators? Second part is to Anand, talking about the nature-based solutions. Most of the time, we think the solution as a nature solution, but it's not the nature solution. It's our solution. We try to introduce it to the nature. So rather than introducing the solution from us to the nature, let nature takes over and propose a solution. We will support those interventions and allow nature to take over the processes. Now, for example, if you take eroded land, rather than we try to introduce certain species, we allow nature to go for regrowth, and then we support providing whatever the inputs that we can, so that we don't need to sustain the system with inputs continuously. Third, very briefly, to Dong, regarding the study in Madagascar food security, you look at the relationship between the affordable like income to the food security, but there are other indicators like the access to food and the people's perception about how food could be selected, especially on the nutritional aspects, are some other factors. So it's not only the affordability, like the availability, accessibility, and other proxy indicators can also contribute to the food and nutrition security. Thank you.
Great, great. Thanks very much for those questions. So I think we'll start with Anupam. I think there are two for you. And then maybe Michelle, I think there were two for you as well. And then Yunji for your question. So Anupam, you first.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. And thank you, Sonia, for the question. So as I mentioned, human well-being is one of the three main pillars of the NBS. So there is no NBS if there are no people and if people don't benefit. And therefore we do look at the human well-being. It's just that it's the least captured aspect of NBS. Most of the focus is on the nature or the climate aspect of it. And that was one of the findings of our evaluation, that we need to do more beyond just counting the number of beneficiaries aggregated by gender in terms of capturing the nature-based solutions benefit to the humanity and going even beyond the economic indicators and ecological indicators, thinking about equity, because there's a lot of apprehension about NBS being used as a green wash for elite capture, especially in restoration kind of initiative. So the short answer is we need to do more in capturing. It's being done, and we need to do more. And then coming back to the question by Mr. De Silva. So my answer is I agree we should let nature take over. The only challenge there is that we have, if you read the planetary boundary report, we have breached the threshold of certain planetary boundaries. And so nature cannot recover in those situations. So those are a special situation where our scientific knowledge, both the current state of the modern science, but also the indigenous science, can help expedite the process, can bring back the nature and ecological processes that we have lost, can rehabilitate and restore it. So in general, I agree, nature can take care of its problem if we lead it to its own design. But then there are situations that nature also needs our help, and with all our knowledge, we can help restore the nature. And my final comment on that, because it's a bit philosophical here, we are also part of the nature. The problem begins when we don't see ourselves as part of the nature. So from a systems perspective, I think if we do anything, it's also part of the nature, and we should think in that way. But overall, I agree that nature is the best solution.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, to respond to the first question first by Paul from the Philippines. So one thing I want to mention is that the impact evaluation, the LORTA program, it's not mandatory within GCF. So currently we are conducting impact evaluation for approximately 10% of the total GCF funded projects. And this is more like a partnership journey we do together with the accredited entities, designing the impact evaluation together, conducting the data together, and writing the report together. And also how we onboard projects, I think you asked as well. So every year we have a workshop, LORTA workshop, where we invite a selected number of recently approved GCF projects. And this is based on first the feasibility of impact evaluation. Also we look into the innovativeness of the topic itself, and also consider regional balance and thematic balance. So please email me if you want to learn more about it. I think there was another question on sustainability by another ADB colleague. And I think it was related to the adoption of conservation practices that it was not sustained. And I totally agree with you. And for more sustainable impact, I think other enabling environments should be in place. For example, in Madagascar specifically, the lack of road infrastructure was the major challenge. After the project, remote villages were not able to access the inputs needed to adopt these practices. So those other enabling environments, road infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and markets as well should be in place. Lastly, related to the question on food security, I also totally agree with you. So the carry index that we use, it's, I think, pretty rigid. And what we do is it's a composite index considering food consumption of households, out of the total budget, how much they spend on food, as well as the coping strategies. But talking with the project team, we discussed that this is actually pretty rigid. And when we do qualitative interviews, households reported that their food security, subjective food security, actually improves. So I think we need to have a better measure, a more context-sensitive food security measure to measure that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Yunji, your question on indicators.
Thank you for the questions. So the question about outcomes. Yes, so we are saying that there is something fundamentally lacking from the current results tracking system. So the entities are not really motivated to report on this wide range of cross-cutting outcomes and co-benefits. So there is only little that's being captured, and so our team called it the minimal impact story system, together with Andreas. So they develop a TOC, and then they say, okay, we will only pick on like water access, improved water access. So that was built into their log frame. But then if you improve water supply and access to clean water, that would have other health-related benefits too. But if the team at the beginning missed that and they didn't include it in the log frame, do you think they will go back to it and then try to bring in these health benefits? No, actually this is a real life case I saw. It's a project in Fiji. And so that came out during the discussion with the accredited entity. And so what we are saying is the entities have a duty to report on results and the progress made annually. So in these annual reports, still we don't get sufficient information. And so we are saying there has to be some way to supplement what's being captured through this framework, result framework. So yes, attribution analysis is important, but I also think I observed through the evaluation country case study visits that very important for us to go there and collect the data ourselves, the qualitative stories and how it really changed the lives of people. And then did we consider the mitigation and adaptation, projects that are dealing with mitigation and adaptation together? So these 153 HWFW result area tagged projects, they are supporting other result areas, including mitigation result areas. So maybe we can argue these are not just adaptation projects, but already cross-cutting projects. So it really depends on how you interpret that. And I just wanted to highlight also these, what we think of as adaptation projects, they do have often mitigation-related co-benefits, right? And vice versa. For instance, we look at forestry, Anupam, as a mitigation result area, but we all know when you work on forestry, there are adaptation-related benefits too. Correct? So we are questioning the makeup of the result areas themselves and how we are trying to collect results and data using this framework. So I hope that answers your questions, and back to you, Garrett.
Great. Thanks, Yunji. I think we'll take a couple more questions. We are getting close to the end, but yeah, there was one question there, but is there any other questions in the room? I have a couple myself, so let's get your question.
Hi. So my question is for Yunji.
Could we just get your name?
My name is Sohini. So my question is for Yunji, and great presentation. I think my question is, and apologies, I know very little of the sector. Maybe that's the reason I have this question. So I think in one of the slides you spoke about water efficient irrigation systems showing clearest benefits, and then coastal water interventions showing least benefits. I was just curious why that is happening. Like, did you unpack that a little bit? Was it because of measurement issues? Was it more there were mixed results, less studies? So I was just, if you could talk a little bit on that. Thanks.
Maybe before, we have one more from Megan.
Hi, thank you all for the presentations and the great work that's behind all of it. Megan from the OECD. I had two questions about learning and the kind of learning cycle, because I know that what you've all presented is a lot of work and there's a lot behind it, especially from GEF, who's worked for many decades. I'm curious to what extent we can see that over time you have sort of a positive upward spiral in terms of learning and the evaluation results. And I was struck by the example of sort of unused high-tech imported technology in one of the studies. That seems to me to kind of be like a very classic evaluation finding, that you've imported a technology that's not well suited to the local context. So when you find those types of findings, is there sort of a second or third degree interrogation to say, well, how is it that we, in today's days, managed to do this mistake, if you will, if we want to consider it a mistake? How was it that we didn't think of that in advance, that maybe these technologies were not properly adapted? Similar questions on like the sustainability findings, how are we not kind of addressing those at entry? And the second question I had was just about to what extent you've been able to get any traction in sharing the learnings with non-GEF countries or non-GCF countries, especially higher income countries. And is there sort of any appetite for learning? Because it seems we have this huge evidence base on nature-based solutions and others that would be applicable in other countries, but because they don't receive funding, they're not probably targeted for cross-learning. So just any thoughts you might have on those learning questions.
Great, thank you, Megan. What I'd like to do to kind of, I think this will be our last sort of responses. So I think I'd like to get Silke and Xenia to respond to those technology dimensions, and then we'll get Yunji to respond to your question, and then maybe Anupam and Michelle, just any final reflections on the questions as well. So we'll start with maybe Silke and then Xenia.
Thank you, Garrett. In terms of learning, I'm fairly new to the GEF, so I think I leave that question to Xenia, who has focused a long time on the learning aspects of these evaluations. I think on chemicals and waste, nothing in particular comes to mind. Thank you.
So Xenia.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Thank you very much. So this is a great question, and learning is a very important aspect of the GEF. GEF is actually aiming to become more a learning organization. As a relatively recent development, after almost 30 years of existence, A couple of years ago, GF Council approved the knowledge and learning strategy of the GF. So it has been approved for 1.5 years, not for a long time. In terms of learning from previous experience and learning from evaluations towards design and implementation of new and ongoing projects. Again, a positive development that now this learning has been institutionalized. The projects have to use lessons from experience of previous projects and also outside the GF. This is important. We know that knowledge doesn't exist only internally within the system. But at the same time, we see that there is a long way to go. In general, the GF systems need strengthening and upgrading to ensure the greater access across the systems. For example, we know that even GF agencies struggle and countries struggle in getting insights from the GF portal, which consists information about GF projects. So this is an ongoing challenge, but we are getting there.
Thank you. And Yunji, your question.
Yes, about the water systematic review. So thank you so much for the question. So I only focused on the systematic review part, but the way we do any type of global evidence review is that we first develop a protocol, and then thinking about, what kind of search criteria we will use, what kind of methods and approach. So from that, we then develop an evidence map and evidence gap map. So what kind of evidence is there, out there? So then we map those available evidence and studies and materials. And from that evidence map and evidence gap map, we do a systematic review. So we were only able to do meta-analyses on the 4 large intervention types because that's where most evidence is kind of concentrated. So what we are saying is there is so much more that's happening, but the studies are not available. So we definitely need to do something about it. And so in some cases, statistical pooling was not possible. So I think the team who worked on this tried to develop, synthesize a narrative to say something. So I hope that answered your question. If you have more specific questions about the protocol, evidence map, and systematic review, do stay afterwards and we can talk. So thank you.
Thank you. So we're almost out of time, so just maybe very concisely, Anupam and Michelle, any kind of closing remark?
Yeah, thanks, Megan, for the question. So you're right, 30 years of GEF experience, but we don't know enough about the consolidated and the cumulative knowledge. So one of the recommendations of the evaluation is that GEF should seriously take the corporate level knowledge management and in bringing these context specific lessons and making it useful for the countries or sectors that GEF has focused on, and it's already work in progress. There's a special unit that has been set up. Also, another recommendation was for our scientific and technical advisory group that they should socialize these scientific terms. So NBS, this is a very loaded scientific jargon. What does it mean? And there are so many definitions that you could easily get lost in definition. So what they're trying to do, coming up with specific guidance for the sectors, for the countries, for projects, like how do we integrate NBS? And this is all based on GEF years of experience. And at the same time, GEF also has to learn a lot from others. And there's a section in the evaluation that I deliberately put where, a lot of, ADB, World Bank projects that are not GEF funded has done excellent NBS. And similarly, other bilateral donors have done, Canada, Netherlands, they have done really good. So we have also got those examples in. So there's a feedback loop between all the organizations working on NBS. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. And Michelle?
Thank you for the question, Megan. So for this impact evaluation, learning is one of the core objectives, and we're not as GEF, but we do have a growing portfolio here. And I think one thing that this learning can really have an impact is synthesizing the findings we have. And I think now we are having like more common themes. For example, what's the impact of training in agriculture? What's the impact by gender? So we hope to work on those aspects as well. Thank you.
Great. So we're a couple of minutes over time, but thanks everyone for staying with us. I mean, just very briefly to summarize, I think we learned a lot from both institutions, both on the importance of indicators, the role of the private sector, the issues of maintaining sustainability in these environmental interventions, and the importance of learning cross-institutionally as well. So I'd like you all to give a final round of applause to our excellent panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Only 2 minutes over time, despite all the challenges.